Welcome back, everybody, to episode 196 of Two Goalies, One Mic, brought to you by Fatty Beer Company, Western New York's premier American tap room with over 300 beers to choose from at 6 different Western New York locations, also located in Rochester. And if you're in Ohio, location there as well. So make sure if you need a beer, make it a Fatty Beer. Let them know Two Goalies, One Mic sent you. I am your host, Duane, joined by... You should have intern Joey there, but we'll go Joey Sultana. We'll take the intern tag off soon. But joining the program, obviously Connor living on the West Coast. Times don't really match up. So thanks for hopping in, Joey. But we're going to bring in our guests right away. One of my favorite guests to have on, one of the funnier hockey personalities when it comes to writers and media. So without further ado, Mr. Greg Wyshynski from ESPN. Greg, how are you today? Obviously a late night last night for hockey and Sabres fans with the news of JJ Peterka. I watched your episode with Jeff Merrick on the sheet. You were great as always. And even more, but such a busy time for people like you this coming week.
What are you going to do for episode 200? Have you figured it out?
No. Why? Why do you ask?
Because, I mean, like, it's a milestone, right? I mean, in the times that I've had big round numbers on the podcast that I've hosted, I've tried to do something special. Like burning Kevin Adams in effigy, like, for an entire half an hour. Have you considered that?
I have a few people that I do have in mind, like guest-wise, but we probably will do something. It's kind of underwhelming when we did episode 100. I mean, we've recorded probably close to, because we do our post-game shows after Sabres game. So technically it wouldn't be 200 episodes, but for the podcast itself, yes, it would be. But I don't know. Anything you should suggest?
Yeah. Sabres legend Taylor Hall. Have him on for half an hour. Discuss
I think he'd be so excited to come on. No doubt about it. The whole 2 goals he scored in a Sabre uniform. Yeah. One of those 2 goals was on opening night. So
that's what I'm talking about. Like he's a part of the fabric of the organization.
No doubt about it.
Why not?
But no, thanks again for hopping on with us, Greg. You're in Long Island, right? You're going to be in Long Island for the draft party.
Yeah, I mean, I live in Brooklyn, but I will make the trek through traffic to the island for the Islanders draft party. They're blowing it out. Like, they've got a bunch of current players, alumni there. I mean, obviously they have the first overall pick. There's some thought that maybe they could trade into the later first round to get James Higgins, the Long Island kid. I don't think they'll be able to, but you never know. So, it's a moment of rebirth. Lou Lamoriello, you're out of here. Now people can grow facial hair. They can play offense. It's a whole thing, and they're very excited.
Go Billy Lano. There's a good guest option. He went really well with Buffalo. Did you ever see that T-shirt that he had like a brand of clothing that he came out with after he retired?
And have I seen it? The Florida Panthers are branded by it. They all wear it. And what's funny about that? So I write a big essay at the end of the Stanley Cup Final that publishes the moment the game is over. So this time it was about how the Panthers are a bunch of sons of bitches on the ice, but behind the scenes they're all really nice to each other. Not a novel concept, but it was a pretty good piece. But one of the things I was looking at and trying to think about what I wanted to write about is they all wore the Billy Lano fashion brand. And if you've ever seen the logo for this thing, I don't know if you guys are like old school comic book fans or G.I. Joe fans. The logo looks like the tattoo that Storm Shadow had on his arm as a ninja. Okay. And I'm like,
pull that up.
Is it possible there's some sort of G.I. Joe Storm Shadow connection with the Florida Panthers? But no, it ended up just being a Finnish clothing company, which was very disappointing. But I think there's like it's some sort of a Chinese alphabet symbol, I think, that means, I don't know, being a brick wall or fortitude or some shit. But like I thought I was really onto something, and it turned out just to be Billy's fashion brand.
I think it's called Billy Bano. Billy Bano is the brand of clothing. There was the picture. I won't spend too much time trying to find it. He might not even have it up on the episode anymore, but the one shirt he had out there, it just said jail.
Yeah.
And it was about his time with the Sabres, which is,
I think the most disappointing thing about that was that Lulu Leino was right there for him, and he didn't go there for a fashion brand. I don't get it.
Oh man,
There's some trademark issues.
But your initial reaction to the deal, Sabres fans are, there's no denying you got a good player back in Michael Kessler, and he fits a giant hole on your blue line. You've been looking for this D partner for Owen Power now for forever, because Dahlin has shown he can just really play with anybody. But it's, my opinion, not enough. You got Josh Doan. There's a lot of unknowns there with him. Will he develop to be the player that scouts hoped he would be when he was drafted in the second round? But just your initial thoughts, and how Sabres fans should feel about this, because very underwhelming.
I think they should feel okay about it when you take into account all of the kind of forces that were pulling against the Sabres in this deal. You obviously had a player that didn't want to be there anymore. I mean, nobody on either side was going to come out and say that he requested a trade. But if you listen to Kevin Adams a couple of days ago, it's pretty obvious that somebody communicated that he didn't want to be there anymore.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. The other thing is, as a restricted free agent, whoever trades for him is obviously going to want to sign him to a new contract. So if you see him go for 7 over 5 in Utah, well, that's the asking price. And so now you have to find a team that's willing to pay him that money within their own salary structure, which complicates things. And then, you obviously have an idea of what you want to get back for him. And it wasn't necessarily Marco Rossi. It was a player that they wanted to add to their blue line. So I think with all of the context, I don't think that it was a disastrous trade for the Sabres. If I'm being honest, like, I know that doesn't really jibe with public sentiment, or, it's not as fun as just completely dunking on the organization every time anybody gets a chance to. But the idea that they botched this, I think, is kind of misguided when you take the context into consideration and when you take the players in consideration. I mean, like, Kesselring is going to be in your top 4 for a good amount of years. Doan's got some upside. The undercurrent to that, though, and this is maybe the frustrating part, is that I think some of the other deals that were on the table were probably not what they wanted because of the finances of it, and having to pay somebody some money, like Marco Rossi, for example. So both of these guys are what they're looking for. They're also cost effective, which you can either say is a good thing or a bad thing. And so I
cool thing.
Yeah, look, it ain't a hobby for me to defend Kevin Adams, but I think on this one he did all right. I got to be honest with you, I think he did all right.
Like I said, I like the player. He's big. He's a stay-at-home, hopefully a legitimate shutdown defenseman going forward, which is something we really desperately needed.
Physical. Don't forget about that too. Yeah. I mean, that's
something you want Owen Power to be. 6'6". He hasn't been that for them. Is the biggest criticism of him. I guess, like, I think Sabres fans would have swallowed this a little bit better. The moment it happened, if maybe there was a pick swap there between 9th and 4th overall, I think nobody would be complaining. Given just, I mean, we watch Peterka every night, man. And, as much, they like to call him one-dimensional, but I think he's just still developing. He's only 23 years old. He's 25 goal and more seasons in a row. Proven that he could be on a first line. Didn't have a power play at all in Buffalo the last 2 seasons and still scored 25. I think 27 and I forget what Joey, what it was? It was 27 and 28.
I think it was 28 and 29.
28, 29. Okay, it was a lot off, but like, he showed he can perform, with top level players, and I think we were just expecting a little bit more there. And it's just a shame that, again, the one criticism is players just don't want to stay in Buffalo, and it sucks. And I don't know. And now even more comes out. Saravelli, a guy who we've really criticized over the past month. Like, I got almost like, at least Sabres fans were like, he was throwing stuff at a wall and hoping it stuck when it came to the Peterka stuff. But turned out a lot of it was true. And now he comes out today. I don't know if you saw that already, but he was questioning the return because he believed that Buffalo had better offers on the table. And he pointed to a team that had 2 first-round picks and 2 roster players. He said that he knew that at one point that Jordan Kyrou was potentially, talked about in a return for JJ Peterka. Again, you don't know who else they would have wanted in return with Peterka, and then Noah Dobson, and that going along with the Marco Rossi stuff coming from Michael Russo with Minnesota. It's just like today has just not been a good day for Sabres fans. You want to find reason to be optimistic. I do. I hope that Josh Doan pans out and ends up being a lot like his dad, but it's really it's tough.
Well, first off, let me look up Kyrou real quick here. Okay, so Kyrou's 27, and he makes $8.1 million in perpetuity, basically, because he's just on a new contract. So I ask you, how does that help Buffalo? Like in what they're trying to do as a franchise? Because honestly, Kyrou's a comparable to Peterka. In if Peterka kind of continues to progress, it might be like a lateral type deal, but it may not. And honestly, like he's 27. Yeah. I agree. They just got 2 guys that are like 23. So again, all due respect to General Manager Saravelli, but like, is Noah Dobson the defenseman that the Sabres need with Owen Power and Rasmus Dahlin here? No. You'd probably want Kesselring or that type of player more. Marco Rossi is an undersized forward that you might not want to necessarily meet his asking price any more than Bill Guerin does. And so like, I think this is what I was saying before, like it is extremely easy and extremely fun to dunk on the Sabres because they shoot themselves in the foot like all the time. And they're a feckless organization. They haven't made the playoffs since like before the first Avengers movie. And we get it, they're a disaster, but it doesn't take much time to just think about these things and understand why they happen and understand why certain things didn't happen. And there are some really big names that are being thrown about for Peterka, but how many of them make sense for what this team is trying to build and what they're looking for? And so this trade might not be as sexy as bringing back Jordan Kyrou, but ultimately, like for the cost of Josh Doan and the cost of Kesselring and what they give the lineup, and again, we don't even know what the situation is contractually for Peterka in some of these places that we're talking about. I don't think that this was a disaster. I don't think this was as embarrassing as people make it out to be.
If he was willing to sign an extension there like he was in Utah, I guess. And I'm not sure what you said the contract was for Kyrou. I think he made a little bit over 8. So
that's probably a lateral move because he makes over 8, and then Peterka just slides into that spot. But again, like, okay, so the 2 things we'll say about that are 1, again, the age, 2, the contractual obligation, and 3, the Blues are getting rid of him for why? like the Blues are in a different place than the Sabres are. They're a contending team. Like if they're looking to cut bait with him, then maybe you should think for a second, why is that? I don't know, man. Like I just think that it was so easy last night to be like Josh Doan and this other guy that I don't know because I don't watch the Western Conference, and then just like ridicule the Sabres for the 100,000th time. But I mean, there is a case to be made that they've done okay for themselves here.
No, I do agree. I like the player. I really, really do. I guess, everything that was getting thrown around for a month, names, you heard that 3rd overall was at one point on the table with Chicago, that, you were just hoping for a bigger, and again, I think that Sabres fans, myself included, would have been a lot. We're ready to pat Kevin Adams on the back, given the 4th overall pick swap with 9.
Where's it all coming? Where's it all coming from? Like, is Chicago saying that they put the 3rd overall pick into motion?
I think Frank put that one out there too.
Okay, so there's a certain amount of hype happening for a player from one media outlet. I think that we all kind of can see that, but neither here nor there. Every player gets hyped up as far as their value goes, and then when the trade comes down, we're usually like disappointed by it. That's just how the NHL works, right? So, I think in Peterka's case, there's clearly a market for him. There's clearly teams that wanted him. And then, as Kevin Adams kind of pointed out in his comments, they had an idea of the steps that they wanted to take in the offseason, and they felt that this was the best way to serve those steps. Now, again, ultimately, was it the right decision? Is the plan good? these are larger topics at hand. But for what they're looking to do, I think the return they got was fine.
I'll ask one more thing before I kick it over to Joey for a quick question. Like, statement really. I think another thing that really kind of irritates Sabres fans too, and again, it's not the player or players. Again, Josh Stone, he's an unknown. We really don't know what we're going to get out of him. There's a lot of hope there. But going back to that word hope is, I think two things with Sabres fans is you're kind of making a deal based on hope again, kind of like what you did with Josh Norris. You know Josh Norris is capable, but you're hoping he stays healthy. Can he stay healthy? He hasn't played a full season in the NHL, and he makes a lot of he makes more money than the Dylan Cousins that you traded away. And then now with this, you're hoping that because he's cheaper at $1.4 million, that you're going to spend that money. Well, we bought out Jeff Skinner last year because we were told, that he didn't fit this mold in Lindy Ruff's system, which, okay, maybe he didn't. He was one-dimensional, but you freed up $6 million on your cap last year, and you didn't spend it. The Sabres are notorious for not spending to the cap year after year after year, and now we're supposed to believe that this year is going to be different under the same owner, under the same GM. I think that's a big concern with Sabres fans too. I don't know if you agree, Joey.
I mean, I do. Like, year after year, they just don't spend their money, and like Kevin Adams always defending Terry Pegula, but like how can you blame the fans for thinking that Terry doesn't want to spend his money? Like, you have $25 million in cap space this year. Like, you got to make some big moves, especially with Peterka gone now. Like, your first line is Zach Benson, Josh Norris, Tage Thompson. Like, Zach Benson, he's a third line defensive winger. Yuri Kulik had like 20 points last season, and Josh Norris is always hurt. Like, you need some top six players.
You have Alex talk too, but like, again, he's going into a contract year, and there's a lot of stuff. I'll get your thoughts, Wish.
Well, I mean, Joey, you know more than anybody, man. It's because there's no palm trees in Buffalo. That's why they can't spend the money. Nobody wants to go there. We know this. There's two reactions to that. The first being that that's what I was trying to say before with this trade. Like, we look at the return, we look at where he went, we look at the contract that he signed, and we look at the financials of the guys coming back the other way, where they're making peanuts this year. And then even when in their arbitration, RFA years, they probably aren't going to break the bank either, right? So it's a different financial stratosphere than where Peterka wanted to end up being. And so because of that, the kind of nefarious side of this thing is like, you say to yourself, well, why did they make this trade in particular? Well, it's because the team doesn't want to spend any money, right? So like, again, it's not justification for the deal. It's kind of a shitty thing about the deal, but it is one of the reasons maybe they make this deal, right? Mm-hmm. Third thing I'll say is, do we think this is a sneaky tank in any way?
That's, you have Gavin McKenna.
That's what I'm saying. And not only that, but like a much better draft next year than this one.
Yeah, listen, here's the thing. There's two sides to that because, you had the stuff come out during the season about Darlene being upset, that he might want out if the Sabres don't right the ship. You have Tuck in a contract year. And if you can't keep Alex Tuck around, a guy, and I've said this so many times, name me a player when you're traded from the best team in the league in Vegas to Buffalo, the worst team in the league, and he had that smile on his face. He was so happy to be here.
Cut him and he bleeds blue. Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like, if you can't keep that guy happy, Tim Connelly's neighbor growing up, like what are we doing here, man? Like, your whole narrative, Kevin Adams, is wanting players that want to be here. You have to keep that guy. You have to. And you tank. I mean, are we going to go through this again? Because I went through that one time, man, and I silently supported it.
You've been through it multiple times, I feel like.
One intentional tank that we know about.
One intentional one.
One that was we kind of lucked into the first overall pick 2 times. We weren't really trying to do it, but it just kind of happened.
I mean, I guess so. What are our warning signs? You know how like they say like, here are the warning signs if you're going to have a heart attack. Like, what are the warning signs for a tank? They don't do anything to the goaltending, but I guess the goaltending's going to be probably what it is now, right? So what are the warning signs for the tank?
If they don't bring in a goaltender to play with either UPL or Levi, depending on which direction. Because Kevin Adams said in his press conference he has all the faith in the world if he has to run it with them two. I'm a big Levi guy. I have a lot of faith in him. He's reminds me mentally, at least, and athletically, a lot of Ryan Miller, the way he talks about the game. I'm not saying he's going to be Ryan Miller, but just when he talks, that's who I think of.
Yeah.
UPL, he's had one good year pro, and he got paid $4.75 million for that one good year. It's I guess that, and I guess the rest of this offseason, how Kevin decides to spend his money, and the Bowen Byram return. Is it going to be for if he gets assets back, picks for Bowen Byram, and he doesn't turn those things into roster players, then I think you're in full tank mode.
Then you got sirens going off behind you. I'm. That was one of my thoughts last night too. When I saw the return of the Peterka trade, like I don't hate it, but it's not a return that speaks to we are pushing for the playoffs next year,
which is the narrative. The narrative. Win now is the narrative, and to me, to your point, what you just said, I don't know if that tells me that they're being serious about making the playoffs next year. I guess. I don't want to keep you for too much longer, Greg. I always appreciate you coming on. Any quick last hit final thoughts before we let you go?
I'm intrigued to see what Peterka ends up being. Like, I think this is a good trade for Utah in the sense that they needed more goal scoring on their wing. I've talked to people that wonder about whether that shooting percentage is sustainable. It seems like there's like 3 or 4 different ways that his career can go. The apex of it, if he learns how to defend, could be Brandon Hagel. And then you come down to a bit to Kyrou, who's, I think a better offensive player than Peterka, but also kind of fraught defensively at times. Mm-hmm. And then there's some people that are like, what if he doesn't improve on what he is? In which case, I heard the name Jacob Verana thrown out, which I don't think is going to happen. I think he's better than Verana. Yeah. And then there's a thought of maybe this is just who he is. $7.7 million over 5 years annually is a bet that this guy gets better than what he is. I don't think it's to pay him for what he is now. There's a certain investment in there. And so I do wonder ultimately whether that investment will be rewarded. Because I know what he is now. I love the player. I love his compete level. I think he's got a cool personality. Like, there's a lot of things I love about JJ Peterka, but I don't know what the ceiling is. I don't know what he'll be when we look back on it in like 3 years, where he'll be, as an offensive and defensive player.
You said personality. That actually kind of came out today a little bit from Craig Rivet and Andrew Peters on After the Whistle. Craig like kind of went on. I don't want to say this. I try to keep myself, but JJ Peterka was more concerned about pouring drinks behind the bar at 4 a.m. Game nights rather than winning. And to that point, we understand. I did listen. 05 to 010, those Sabres teams on Chippewa down here in downtown Buffalo were legendary. Derek Roy made a name for himself down on Chippewa. But the difference here is those teams came to the rink to play, competed, and their hunger to win was second to none in those few years. And I think that's the big difference. But it's just funny that you kind of brought character there.
Like, due respect to Craig Rivet, he's on the Buffalo Sabres. It's a miracle this guy wasn't bringing a handle of Jim Beam to the bench. For God's sakes.
They're all down at 40 Thieves, apparently. Like, that's the new spot in Buffalo. So, Greg, thanks again for coming on. Actually, one last final thought. You make it real fast. You're a big wrestling guy. I'm a big wrestling guy. Your thoughts on the state of wrestling right now, specifically WWE?
Not a fan of the Cena heel turn and the way it's the way it happened, nor the inauthenticity of the entire run. Not a huge fan of Paul Heyman being in charge of a lesser faction than the faction that he was previously engaged with. The product's very entertaining. The work rate's better than it's ever been. But there are just some things about it right now that I'm not really digging all that much on the WWE side. Yeah. And then on the AEW side, like, there's really good things happening again. I think Hangman Moxley is going to be a great match coming up in July. And then my favorite wrestler in the world at the moment is in AEW, which would be Toni Storm, who's
timeless Toni Storm.
Old-timey actress starlet gimmick is one for the ages, and her execution of it is constantly impressing me, and I can't believe they've squeezed as much out of it as they have.
Yeah, that's the one storyline that really been able to find ways to keep fresh as it's gone on and on and on. It's never gotten stale. I'm very interested to see what they do with Karrion Kross because in WWE, because there's a big demand for him lately. And, we'll see if they, they say they listen to the fans on the internet. So we'll see if they decide to do with that. But Greg, thanks so much for hopping on, man. I hope to have you on again soon. Maybe if you feel obliged to be on episode 200. See,
what?
You brought it up.
And bump Dominik Hasek? I don't think that's.
Oh God, I don't know, man. I dude, that's a pipe dream for me. I've tried a few times. I have some mutual friends with him, but he doesn't really do the podcast thing, dude. He doesn't really, as far as I can tell. And he's involved in politics now, so it's probably, I think he likes to stay away from that stuff.
Yeah, that's a shame. That would be an incredible conversation. So,
oh yeah,
you'll have to set your sights a little bit lower. Maybe Dan Bilesma.
I have Darren Pupa. Darren Pupa agreed to come on.
There you go.
Darren Pupa. He was just in Buffalo. He went on a wing tour. So, thanks again, Greg. Appreciate it, bud.
Take care.
That was Greg Wyshynski. Obviously, you guys all know him from ESPN, Puck Daddy. Very appreciative of him hopping on with us. We went a few minutes over, but always good to have him on. We've had him on the past Kale. Joey, we haven't. You were pretty active last night on Twitter. Your thoughts on the return, and I know Greg gave us some insight there, which I appreciate it. Because just give you a different point of view from the outside looking in. But your feelings on last night and the return of Michael Kesselring and Josh Doan, and hopefully we have more to come here, but I'm not holding my breath.
Yeah, I mean, they are my opinion is pretty similar to Greg in this situation. Like when I would do like those little Puckpedia like GM modes or whatever, I'd always get Kesselring from Utah, and I would usually use Byram in a swap, probably like Byram in a like second round pick or whatever. So I'm happy that we got Kesselring, but I didn't think it should have costed JJ Peterka, our first line winger, to get a second pairing defenseman who played on their third pair, which I don't know. It just seems a little weird to me that we had to give up that much for a second pair defenseman.
Yeah, Utah was really, really deep on the right side of their blue line, like really, really deep. We have Marino, they had Kesselring now, obviously a Sabre, Sean Durzi, which honestly, when I heard that it was Utah, I was pulling for Durzi. Honestly, I like him a lot. I know producer Steve likes him a lot. You're thinking for fourth overall. I don't agree. I know I said it in the chat earlier today that I was listening to Paul Hamilton talk for like 5 minutes. I had to shut it off because he says this isn't Eichel and Reinhart. You weren't getting fourth overall. Listen, it's different drafts. There isn't a generational player in this draft. Nothing against Schaefer. But there's no players that were hyped in the years that like Reinhart and Eichel went. And I mean, if you want a guy who can be a perennial 30 goal scorer every single season, who's only 23 years old, and you control him as an RFA, why? Yeah, it might cost you fourth overall. It might. Like, why wouldn't that be? Like, why wouldn't that be? Especially, the rumor last night, going around, it wasn't really said by anybody. It was the thing was maybe it was a 3-team deal with us, Utah, and the Islanders that could bring Noah Dobson, which I love the idea of Noah Dobson. I think he's going to be a fantastic defenseman. Whose ceiling do you think is higher, Michael Kesselring or Noah Dobson?
Dobson for sure.
Kessering's a little bit more proven right now, sure, maybe, but I love the idea of Noah Dobson. I think he has his high ceiling is much higher, and he's a right-handed shot defenseman, and he wasn't playing on the third pairing and with the Islanders.
Yeah, like he was in a Norris conversation 2 years ago. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah,
like he had like 70 points or something like that. Like it was a really good year, and this year he had I think career high in like defensive stats, like analytics or whatever. And like
I'll bring it up right now as you go. I didn't mean what I said. I meant that. He's not stay at home.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He's an offensive guy is maybe what you're not looking for. He's a few years older. Actually, he might be. Is he as old as Kesselring? Kesselring, is he 20?
He's 25.
Kessering's 25?
Yeah.
And so it's the same age. So the same, for some reason, I thought Dobson was a little younger. But yeah, I mean, Dobson would have been a fantastic get. He's not a small guy. He's 6'4". He can play on your first or your second pairing. I didn't realize Dobson has been in the league that long.
The only knock on Dobson is that he wants like $11 million, which is like, that's Dahlin money. And to spend $30 million on Power, Dahlin, Dobson, I don't know how I feel about that, but the cap is going up.
I'm okay with it only because you're trading away Peterka, which you're expecting to pay that guy, essentially what do you I guess got in Utah. But you're not, it's not a third left-handed defenseman. Like you were possibly looking at paying Byram if you were to, extend him, between $7 and $8.5 million, just throw a number out there. But like, at least, you have a number one right-handed defenseman on this team.
Yeah. I think the play style of Kesselring is more what Power needed in a partner, like a big physical defensive guy. But like Dobson, 100%, he's like the better player, obviously. Like he wants to love it for a reason. But I don't know. Like, I like Kesselring a lot, but especially now with Peterka gone, I think we're gonna need to really get a good top six forward in the Byram trade in free agency. Nikola Ehlers just said he's gonna test the market, so he'd be a good Peterka replacement, which I think they play very similar, anyways.
Yeah.
And like honestly, it comes down to also Thompson if he wants to be a center or wing. Like, do you need a first line center or do you need a first line winger or two first line wingers?
Yeah, it's true. I get without Peterka now, you had one hole, I think, in your top six without a doubt.
Yeah.
Before this trade. Now you have two gaping holes in your top six, and you better address it. And like we said with Greg, like he talked about, is this like a sneaky tank? Like if you don't address those two holes, it might be. It might be, and you're gonna put your fan base through this crap again.
And honestly, like if you look at the team that lost 18 games in a row, like when we won the power draft, I think that team on paper looks better than our team now without Peterka. Like that first line had like Skinner, Eichel, Reinhart, like all those guys. Like, man, I feel like we're taking a step backwards every single year. Kevin's really got to do something this offseason.
Yeah. So before we get out of here, do you have any final thoughts? I guess I wanted to keep this one a little bit shorter because it's kind of like an impromptu episode. But any final thoughts from you? And I think you make your second appearance with us since you've been with us. So glad you could hop on. Final thoughts from you?
Honestly, I like the trade, but at the same time, a little bit of an overpayment. But if we do keep making trades this offseason, I think it could be a good year. Obviously, how I said, I think we need two top six forwards and hopefully a backup goalie. So,
yeah, the goaltending situation is interesting. Again, I have much more faith in Devin Levi than I do Kopeka Luukkonen. I think he's a lot more headstrong in the UPL. That's just my opinion. Yeah. You can take it for what it is. I think if I think franchise goalie, I think Devin Levi before I think UPL. But you need like Thatcher Demko would be a great guy to bring in, but apparently from what I'm hearing, they're potentially working on an extension for Thatcher Demko. So actually, that stupid page, the NHL Rumor Report that we keep seeing on Twitter, just tweeted out literally just now. Chris Johnson, as many as 8 teams are in touch with the Sabres for Bowen Byram, said on TSN. Yeah,
I'm pretty sure those 8 teams were Philadelphia, Boston, New York Rangers, Vancouver, and I think I'm missing one. I don't know if I said Boston or not, but yeah.
From Matthew Fairburn, Michael Kesselring, and Josh Doan live together in Utah and are planning to live together in Buffalo. Should make the transition to the Sabres easier. Actually, we'll get some comments here from the FaceTime with Kesselring. Kesselring Connections knows Levi from college, and he played at Northeastern. Zucker from Arizona. Thompson from Worlds. He was roommates with Doan in Utah, and they're planning on they're planning on living together. So if I can grab any more Kesselring on Zoom. I'm ready to prove I can play in an elevated role, says Sabres are one of the teams he feels are the most fun to watch. Okay. It's nice to hear. I'm trying to look here for more comments and more quotes from not a lot have been tweeted out yet, but He did just meet with the media for the first time. So, my immediate reaction was bad, just like a lot of other people's is bad. And I tweeted out a thread earlier, and I stick by it. Like, I've dedicated a large portion of my life to hockey, playing and coach. I didn't play at a high level. I'm not going to pump my own tires, but I coached for almost 10 years. Again, not a high level of coaching, but coaching the last. A lot of my time was spent at hockey rinks, watching not just my own team play, but other teams play. And now with the show the past 5 years, I look at hockey through the lens of my experience with the game and as a fan. And I'll be the first to admit, man, I do not know a lot about analytics, and I know how important they are. But if you were to get me one of those charts, good luck. I couldn't tell you. But when you have guys that are big in that community agreeing that this wasn't enough, it's very telling. It is. It is. And you see the reports come out from the guy who broke the trade, who was beating that drum for a month now, and Frank Saravelli, and saying that these names were out there. And I didn't get a chance to make my point with Greg, but you think that'd be like a ladder, going from Jordan Kyrou or Peterka to Jordan Kyrou. Yeah, but you would hope that Kyrou is the guy that Peterka turns into the finished product.
Yeah.
And you could have that guy, 27 years old or not. He's more proven. Not that I'm upset with the way Peterka played. I always felt that he would develop his game with more time. I know Michael Pecco was on with Johnny Lazarus today on Morning Cup of Hockey, and he spoke so glowingly of his time coaching Peterka in Rochester.
Yeah.
The guy, he has a lot of drive, and he's an immaculate skater. Pekka said he skates like the wind, and he's a special player, and I think he will be. But, who would you rather have in your top six, Joey? JJ Peterka or Jordan Kyrou?
Like right now or in the future?
Right now.
Right now, I would say Kyrou because he's the more like finished product that you said. But
yeah, and putting him on the wing with whoever your center is, maybe it's Tage again. I don't know. I know Lindy likes him at right wing, and I know he prefers to play on the wing. But who knows? We'll see how the center position shakes out. But you could still get your Kesserling other ways.
Yeah,
you have Bowen Byram, you have 9th overall, you have a number of pieces in you have, not that I want to trade Constant Hellenius, but you have Hellenius. You have, I think the next best after Hellenius is probably Ostlund. You have one of the leading scorers in the AHL last year in Isaac Rosen, who is just waiting for an opportunity. Mm-hmm. Those guys, there's no roster spots available for them. Where are they going to play? He's going to keep them in Rochester constantly?
Yeah, exactly.
So there are other ways you can get that right-handed shot defenseman, and maybe another right-handed shot, depending on what you do with Connor Clifton and Samuelson. I don't know. But like there are other ways you could have done it. Would have loved to have seen Noah Dobson, depending on the contract, would have ended up looking. Marco Rossi, while I was a big Rossi guy at the draft, I wanted him so much over Quinn. But in the same breath, it's like he doesn't put you over the top, in my opinion. He helps you. He doesn't put you over the top. You would essentially have 3 second-line centers instead of a first. And you another small player. You have plenty of those.
Yeah.
And not taking away from Marco Rossi. He is a very intelligent player and has some finishing ability, and I still think is still going to continue to grow. We lost that draft pick, over, Jack Quinn over Rossi. Sabres fans should be kicking themselves for that. Kevin Adams should be kicking himself for that. But,
I like Rossi a lot, but even then, that would be a slight downgrade on Peterka anyways. He is small. He's like a similar player to Peterka, just more of a playmaker, I guess. We do need more playmakers, but that's just like a lateral move. I wanted to use Peterka and another piece to go get something bigger, like a Jason Robertson or like a Jordan Kyrou, or like Elias Pettersson, something like that. Kevin Adams is always making these hockey trades, which doesn't make us better. It's just the value going from one side to another.
Yeah, true. I That's just about it for me. I know next episode we'll have Connor on and he can, properly react, to the trade. I know how he feels about it. Hit some comments right here, but actually, because I have been neglecting the peanut gallery. Let's see here. We got, I like both the new guys. We need that 4th pick to complete the deal. Kevin Cave. And that's another thing, too, is that an indictment of Kevin Adams and feel like I tweeted him getting taken advantage of, because of his inexperience. Like, could you have gotten that pick swap 4th for 9th if you would have stood your ground and said, hey, I don't have to make this deal. Yeah. I really don't. Like, if you want JJ Peterka, you're going to have to go back 5 spots in this draft. Especially with, like, the other rumored trades, too. Like, I'm surprised they didn't. There was a big market for him. Yeah, 100%. We said it to Wish. I say it now. Like, I think if you were able to make that pick swap, we're all praising Kevin Adams, and there's nobody criticizing him. Yeah. And is that due to the inexperience, of him as a GM and just, not willing, more concerned about getting the deal done rather than, playing poker with him. You know what I mean? Like, all right, call me back when you want to have a real conversation. There's plenty of a market for JJ Peterka. I can get this deal somewhere else. Say it with confidence. Say it with your chest, Kevin. And we had all the leverage too. Like, we have his rights for 4 more years. Like, there's no reason to rush this deal at all. He's a power play specialist. If you're talking about JJ, you're absolutely wrong. He's not good on the power play. Yeah, he did a lot. Most of his scoring 5-on-5. That I'm sorry, John, or Jason, but that is incorrect. He is not a power play specialist. If you want to talk about, he can be talking about somebody else, but there is no way you can call JJ Peterka a power play specialist. He did all of his scoring 5-on-5. Like Josh Norris, maybe, or I don't know who else would be a power play. They call Kulika a power play guy with that shot because he did a lot of the scoring. It was a lot of those 5-on-5. Yeah, exactly. So. Again, for the last time, I'm all out of stuff to talk about. The CBA, restructured CBA came out today, some interesting stuff to talk about there, but we'll probably save that for Tuesday. Joey, thanks for hopping on, bud, at the last minute. No problem. This has been episode 196, 2 Goalies, 1 Mic, brought to you by Fatty Beer Company, Western New York's premier market and tap room with over 300 beers to choose from at 6 different Western New York locations. If you need a beer, make it a Fatty Beer. Let them know we sent you over here at 2 Goalies, 1 Mic. I am Duane for intern Joey, not Connor Hurley. We'll talk to you later, and as always, for better or for worse, go Sabres. Talk to you later.